In today's episode, we'll talk about Russel Wright. He's an American industrial designer most famous for his ceramic dinnerware. It's likely you or your parents had some of his designs in the kitchen. Even I have a serving bowl from him at home. Wright was credited to bringing modernism to the general public after the 1930s. How is he related to Chinese restaurants in America, though? We will find out. Hi, my name is Christy, and this is the American Chinese Food Show. Many renowned architects had dabbled in designing for restaurants. Zaha Hadid designed the Monsoon restaurant in Japan in 1989. Mies van der Rohe even designed a drive-in. And the Spring Green restaurant in Wisconsin by Frank Lloyd Wright was recently added to the National Register of Historic Places. But a Chinese restaurant designed by a household name designer? Shun Lee Dynasty might be the only one. We covered how Shun Lee Dynasty is the first Chinese restaurant to be rewarded 4 stars from the New York Times in the previous episode. Russel Wright only designed for 3 restaurants in his lifetime. Shun Lee Dynasty in 1965 was his last commercial interior project before he passed away 10 years later. Here is a review in the newspaper on this 120-person restaurant. At first blush, it may seem outre. At second, you'll love it. Asian grasses, bamboo in a myriad conceits. There is a huge phone link, sort of a melange of glass, wind chimes, and paper cutouts. The linen, china, glass, all Wright designed. And who is a greater master of such? Outre, for sure. The book Interior Design in the 20th Century described it pretty well. Columns were covered in candy apple vinyls, each side a different color. Magenta pink, hot orange, royal blue, torrid purple, bright green, soft light blue, and chartreuse. Hot colors were on the entrance faces, cool colors led toward the exit. Inch-wide strips of gold vinyl tinsel composed curtains to divide alcoves for large tables. The overhead wind chime was composed of kappa shell, steel, and hundreds of Chinese toy animals, birds, dolls, fans, pom-poms, feather dusters, and coins of gold vinyl. All of this spun around, swiveled and tinkled in the air conditioning along with the gold tinsel dividers and other elements. To truly appreciate what was happening there, we should look at the architecture trends and the Chinese restaurants at the time. This is 1965 in New York City. We can see Chinese restaurant interiors from postcards, but know that this is a biased sample because only the restaurants catering to mostly American patrons tend to print postcards as souvenirs. We definitely see the quote-unquote Chinese decor. Lacquered tables, lanterns, the colors red and gold, and dragons, of course, like the ho-ho. But there were also restaurants that were more subtle, like Old China and China Bowl. At the same time, a new trend of festive restaurants emerged as city residents began to be willing to pay more for lavish and exotic surroundings. The Four Seasons restaurant designed by Philip Johnson is one of the first examples. The interior alone cost $4.5 million in 1959. The Guggenheim Museum, which opened the same year, cost only $3 million. Every power broker in New York City, from Martha Stewart to Henry Kissinger, had the regular table there. But La Fonda del Sol, designed by Alexander Girard, took the cake in the category of theme restaurant. It had an actual adobe house, an open grill framed by a typographic wall, and an 11-foot brass sun whose parts moved with the help of an overhead fan. Michael Tong and T.T. Wang, the owners of Shun Lee Dynasty, strategically chose their location on 2nd Avenue at 48th Street, close to the United Nations and Midtown corporate headquarters. The clientele would mean they needed to go big. Festive themed restaurants were certainly not new. Chinese restaurants in America were some of the pioneers, as you just saw in the postcards. Russel Wright brought a different theme to the patrons. He believes Americans enjoy Chinese food in the mood of a festival, so he added decorations that suggest the fresh, earthy gaiety of Chinese villages. The back of the menu explains, during his work for the US State Department in 6 Far Eastern countries, he learned to enjoy Chinese food, and in this restaurant, he had satisfied his ambition to express his appreciation for this great cuisine. What was Wright doing in Far Eastern countries? And what are the 6 Far Eastern countries? American cultural production became an important element of global diplomacy after World War II. Wright's dinnerware was on the tables of millions of Americans. That success attracted the U.S. State Department, so he was contracted in 1955 to help the new Republic of Vietnam improve the design, production, and distribution of Vietnamese handicraft products for export and domestic consumption. Wright also traveled with the craft expert and a fashion designer to Taiwan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Hong Kong to assess the larger region's potential to produce handicraft items for American domestic markets. How did the trip influence Wright's design for the Shun Lee Dynasty? The decorations on the tableware, the menus, the windows, and the wall paintings came directly from turn-of-the-century Chinese folk art, especially the witty art of Chinese paper cutting. The walls have alternating gold and ivory panels with Chinese paper cutout animals and figures on each panel. Bright hues of the menu match the decor accent touches too. On the front of the menu, we see a lion playing with a ball, one of the traditional Chinese luck patterns. Inside, we see the paper cutouts of the 8 immortals. Wright, of course, also designed all the serving equipment in China for Shun Lee Dynasty. Black plates were for appetizers, turquoise for soups, burnt orange for entrees, and hot pink for desserts. Linen was gold or lime colored. The dinnerware was manufactured as part of the Polynesian line by the Sterling China Company in Ohio. While there are not many records on the restaurant interior, a few of the dinnerware were on the auction market, so we can take a closer look at Wright's work. Teapots with whimsical characters and teacups with a duck, rabbit, and a chicken. There's also a sauce dish shaped like a butterfly. Shun Lee Dynasty was a distinct departure from Russel Wright's modernist industrial design style. I was honestly surprised to see the restaurant interior from the person who wrote the guide to easier living, promoting living simply, and the person who built the 75-acre woodland modernist estate Manitoga. Trends come and go. The New York magazine called Shun Lee Dynasty's decor now rather cliche and slightly tacky, just 6 years after it opened. Pearls, a new high-end Chinese restaurant, chose Charles Guathmy, one of the New York Five, as their architect in 1973. And they went the complete opposite way. The interior was painted white and carpeted in gray, but I still appreciate Russel Wright taking Chinese restaurant interiors out of the old formula. That's it for today's episode. If you like our content, subscribe to the channel. See you soon.